At the end of my sophomore year, one of my teachers has us craft a speech centered around one question: what is the meaning of your life? A lot of weeks go into preparing the speech, a lot of thinking, a lot of reflecting. Presentation day finally came, but what followed after my speech wasn't a sigh of relief, but rather a realization at how confused I was. Don't get me wrong, I tried to be authentic and convey a more vulnerable side of me. I remember having a theme of trying to serve and change the world, but I distinctly remember in the weeks following up struggling to figure out how. How do you actually change the world? I felt like I lacked a real passion, and furthermore, didn't know how to find one. I saw this same thread in other people, seemingly trapped in a society that told them to make a difference without giving them any guidance for how. In junior year, one of my friends and I participated in the Conrad Challenge. To give an overview, the Conrad Challenge is an entrepreneurship competition that has students build up a business product or concept. After some initial brainstorming, I suggested an app to help people who stutter based on a brief period of stuttering I experienced as a kid. After some extensive online research, this is what I came up with. More formally, stuttering is an impediment characterized by disfluent speech. It differs from the more occasional slip-ups that people tend to have in their day-to-day language, but rather refers to a more prolonged, regular version, by which the stutterer really knows what to say, but is just unable to say it. According to the National Stuttering Association, there are 70 million people who stutter around the world. About 1% of Americans stutter, and astonishing, 8 in 10 children report being bullied due to stuttering. I know that this bullying doesn't have to be at school. It can be off campus or even at home. Stuttering can be negatively stigmatized as a false indication of nervousness, anxiety, and even stupidity. It's not surprising that it can be linked to social alienation and sometimes depression. From early on, the Conrad Challenge fostered a no-box mindset in me, of going beyond my comfort zone to explore and discover new ideas, because that's how innovations are born. So rather than sticking to information easily found online, I decided to actually meet people who stutter in what became a year-long journey. In particular, I started contacting speech-language pathologists and attending support groups and conventions in order to learn about my audience and stuttering treatment. At my first support group meeting, as more and more people began sharing their stories, I began to feel a strange weight drop within me. Being the only one without a stutter, wasn't I effectively an outsider? This was their meeting. I didn't belong there. And what was I supposed to feel when I hadn't suffered from my stutter for very long? Happy, guilty, lucky? But with each meeting, I was blown away by people's willingness to be vulnerable and honest. And so I went to another one, and another one. Until 1 year later, when I'm still going. I'm always amazed by all the difficult situations, all the obstacles that stutterers have to go through. It can be the little things, like not ordering what you want because you can't pronounce the word pizza. Little things that we all take for granted, but for people who stutter pose an obstacle and mean you aren't good enough. It can be humiliating experiences, like being ridiculed by your own family members, or being turned down for a job because of your speaking skills. I saw all of this throughout my meetings, and I came to understand why stuttering can make people feel unattractive, powerless, anxious, and dumb. But then there were other times I was stunned, not necessarily because of the obstacle, but because of how they overcame them. I had the fortune of meeting some truly remarkable people who showed me what courage and resilience look like. These were people whose stutter had been dismissed all of their lives with advice like, just get over it, or snap out of it. These were people who had overcome others and their own harsh judgments to do what they loved most, whether that be singing or telling the most hilarious jokes, or being a social activist, actor, and national public speaker. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that people who stutter are some of the happiest, funniest, most confident people I know. When you put it that way, someone who stutters is no longer so different or strange than the rest of us, and I am similarly no longer so different from them. This month-by-month realization led me to dissolve my outsidership as I broke down the illusory walls I had fabricated between them and me. In my first meeting with an SLP, I'll call him Josh, he told me this: "My job is to help people embrace their stutter." In the moment, I was confused. Isn't an SLP supposed to help you stutter less? But over time, I began to comprehend his words more. You can sometimes see it, but people who stutter tend to talk with a certain tenseness in their voice that reflects their insecurity about their speech. An SLP's primary purpose, then, is to help people speak naturally, confidently, and without worry. I think this year-long immersion into the stuttering community radically changed my point of view. I came in thinking that stuttering was bad and that the goal of any treatment process should be to get rid of it. But after meeting and engaging with people who stutter, I realized that that shouldn't be the primary focus and that stuttering was completely fine. All of these lessons learned culminated in an app we built for Conrad, which we called Stutterless. Stutterless was created with the mindset that we should celebrate, not shame people for their stutter. To go into more specifics, it's an online platform that simulates speech therapy to support people who otherwise wouldn't have access to it. Based on my interactions with SLPs, I realized the importance of individualized care. So the app features an AI-based system to set a customized training path with speech exercises. Attending support groups was also crucial for understanding what exactly people need. And what I found they needed most was community and a sense of belonging. That's why the app also features a community-oriented side in which people can share stories, dispel misconceptions, and support one another. The app actually tries to replicate a support group environment via the storyboard, which is a place where people can share pieces of their stuttering journey. Ultimately, it aims to foster a sense of vulnerability, which I found crucial at support group meetings, in order to break down barriers and open people up for dialogue. When I look back on this journey, I really do see the importance of listening and observing to build the best platform possible, and I see the power of empathy. In fact, we eventually won the Conrad Challenge because, to cite our feedback, we did the best at connecting with and understanding our audience. Empathy means connecting with others and understanding what it's like to live from a different point of view. For that matter, it requires a leap of faith to step out of your perspective and enter someone else's. Empathy means suspending judgment. It is very much a process of discovery. In fact, I often equate empathy with curiosity. Oftentimes, we tend to form an identity by labeling ourselves and then only associating with people who fall under that same label. But this mindset leads nowhere. I am not a person that enjoys coffee. In fact, I actually get sleepy when I drink coffee. So what? That means that I can't interact with people who do enjoy coffee? Well, gosh, then I've just lost 65% of Americans right there. Or on another note, I don't personally have cancer. So does that mean that I can't talk with or even try to help people who do have cancer? By this reasoning, I'd be alone very quickly. We often have this mindset even if we don't realize it, and we unnecessarily alienate others as a result. This pattern is extraordinarily relevant in today's climate, with people categorizing themselves into clean-cut factions and no dialogue in between. But empathy can help, because empathy means understanding what ties you to the most different person, what makes people belong not to 20 different communities, but the same community. To return to the question, how do you change the world around us? I believe that the path starts with empathy. And the best way to develop empathy is by talking with people, especially different people. And this doesn't have to be a convoluted scheme. It can be as simple as calling a small business and hearing their story for the past year. If your initial reaction is, oh, that's going to be awkward, well, then you have the exact same mentality that I just described. You feel like an outsider that wouldn't belong. But I encourage you to instead be curious and learn from these conversations. If you want to change the world, first go out to discover it. First step out of your comfort zone to meet different people. This past summer, social justice protests blew up across the country. What inspired me through these calls for racial equality was who was making them. Calls rose from people of varying gender, race, sexual orientation, and age. People stood up for one another as though they belonged to the same community, because they do. And even though others may have dismissed these protests as trouble and chaotic, people at least pushed towards a greater understanding of the struggles of others, and the world was immediately better because of that. There are countless problems plaguing the world, and countless more people suffering under them. An inertia for change results from two mindsets. The first is what I call the not my problem mindset, and it goes something like this. What does that problem have to do with me? It's not my concern. And then the second is the outsider's justification, which is fueled by an inner fear that even if we did try to help, we'd feel like a perpetual outsider that would never belong. Apathy is the result of both. I had the opportunity to meet Braden Harrington at a stuttering convention a few months ago. If you don't know him, he is a teenage stutterer who spoke at the Democratic National Convention of August of last year. I asked him, how did you convince yourself to speak nationally? Because I guessed that this would be an incredibly nerve-wracking task. And he replied, to stand up for those who aren't being heard. The purpose of empathy is not to passively take in information, but rather to act on it. To not pity, but rather fight for and empower the people you meet. So I ask you, will you also empower those who aren't being heard right now? Will you stand up for and listen and learn from people who are suffering right now? Will you be the one to empathize? Thank you.